Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a profoundly universal human experience, hardship. But more importantly, we're going to talk about spiritual resilience. We're going to unpack this fascinating paradigm of patience and mercy found in classical texts, and as you'll see, it offers a completely empowering lens on how we view our everyday struggles. So let's start with a really heavy question. How do we find meaning when life abruptly strips away our capabilities? Whether it's a sudden permanent injury, a rough bout of sickness, or honestly just the chaotic disruptions of everyday life, we all hit those walls where our normal capacity is just gone. The emotional stakes of these unexpected curveballs are high for all of us. But what if there was actually a structured way to find purpose right in the middle of that loss? Well, we're looking at a classical Islamic manuscript that holds centuries of ancient wisdom. Specifically, it contains the recorded sayings of Prophet Muhammad, which are known as Hadith. Today, we're zeroing in on two specific passages from this text, and honestly, they provide an absolute masterclass in how to reframe human adversity. All right, moving into Section 1, Universal Reality of Hardship, Facing Life's Unexpected Trials. Our source material scales this whole concept of hardship across a pretty wide spectrum. On one end, you've got the extreme trial. We're talking severe, life-altering tests that permanently change how a person interacts with the world. But on the exact opposite end, you've got the common disruption. These are your everyday inconveniences, catching a cold, getting a stuffy nose, or maybe having your whole morning routine upended by a missed flight. The amazing thing is, the text addresses both, creating this incredibly comprehensive safety net for the human experience. Let's look closer at Section 2. Patience through severe loss, the ultimate test. And I quote, God Almighty says, "If I deprive my slave of his two beloved things, meaning his eyes, and he remains patient, I will let him enter paradise in compensation for them." This is known as Hadith 33. And wow, it is an incredibly profound statement. It's addressing the devastating, irreversible loss of eyesight. Obviously, the physical loss here is immense, but the spiritual compensation outlined by this tradition, it's literally infinite. Paradise. Now, you might be thinking this ultimate reward is just automatic because the tragedy happened. Actually, it's not. It requires two very distinct conditions. First, bearing the loss patiently. And second, actively seeking and expecting that spiritual reward. It's such a brilliant structure, right? Because it requires the person experiencing the loss to remain an active participant in their own spiritual journey. They aren't just a passive victim of circumstance. We really need to unpack this concept of patience for a second, because context is key here. In the secular world, we kind of view patience as just waiting, just gritting your teeth until the clock runs out. But the spiritual definition derived from this text is entirely different. Patience here means enduring hardship without despair while actively expecting divine reward. It's totally dynamic. It's this active state of hoping and trusting in divine compensation. It literally turns a moment of extreme physical deprivation into a moment of immense spiritual productivity. Okay, on to Section 3, Mercy in Illness and Travel, Grace in Everyday Disruptions. So, Hadith 34 says, if a servant falls ill or travels, the likes of what he used to do when he was resident and healthy will be recorded for him. Just think about what this actually means. According to this framework, divine grace isn't strictly reserved for catastrophic life-altering loss. It covers our mundane, daily physical interruptions too. So when you're sick in bed and literally can't do your normal good deeds, or when you're utterly exhausted from traveling, this tradition states you are credited exactly as if you had done them. No way, right? But that's the promise. Let's look at this side by side. On one hand, you have the healthy, stationary believer who is physically out there doing their daily good deeds. On the other hand, you have the ill or traveling believer who is physically unable to perform those same routines. Yet the text asserts they receive the exact same spiritual credit. The secular view sees illness or travel as this frustrating, annoying pause in productivity. But the spiritual view, it sees an active period of gaining reward purely out of divine mercy. It's like your past habits and intentions are mathematically converted right into current grace. And that brings us to Section 4, Reframing Our Daily Struggles, the Unifying Mindset. Here is the big takeaway. Patience transforms worldly trials into spiritual triumphs. The brilliant logic flowing through both of these passages is that your physical capability absolutely does not define your spiritual success. Whether you're facing the permanent, agonizing loss of your sight or you're simply grounded by a really bad flu, your spiritual state is entirely protected by divine grace. That is, as long as you maintain that active, hopeful patience we talked about. The trial itself becomes the very vehicle for the reward. Which leads me to a final thought I want to leave you with. If every illness or delay is already spiritually compensated, how does that change the way we face tomorrow's challenges? Imagine approaching your next frustrating setback, whether it's massive or completely microscopic, not as an unfair obstacle, but as a moment where grace is already working in your favor. Thank you so much for diving into this explainer with me today. I really hope this ancient framework gives you a powerful, refreshing new perspective on whatever you might be facing next.